In the heart of Seattle, where gray skies hang low and the air smells like rain and saltwater, Mark Ellis was already having a bad week. At 38, Mark was doing his best to raise his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, alone. Since his wife passed 3 years earlier, life had been a careful balancing act of overtime shifts, school drop-offs, late-night homework, and stretching every dollar until it nearly snapped. He worked as a mechanic at a small auto shop near Rainier Avenue. Honest work, but it barely covered rent and groceries. That morning, his old pickup sputtered as he pulled into a gas station before work. He checked his wallet. $12. Enough for gas, barely. As he stepped out, he noticed a sleek silver sedan parked awkwardly near the air pump. A woman in a long wool coat stood beside it, looking frustrated. She couldn't have been more than her mid-30s, her dark hair pulled back neatly, phone pressed to her ear. Mark hesitated. He was already late. But Lily's voice echoed in his mind. "Daddy, you always say good people help when they can." With a sigh, he walked over. "Car trouble?" he asked gently. The woman looked relieved. "I think so. It just died. It was making this awful clicking sound." Mark popped the hood and took a look. Within minutes, he diagnosed the problem, a failing battery connection in a loose terminal. Nothing major. He borrowed a wrench from his truck and tightened the connection, cleaned the corrosion with a rag from his back seat, and asked her to try again. The engine roared to life. The woman's face lit up. "Oh my gosh, you have no idea how much you just saved me. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Mark shrugged. "Happens all the time. You'll probably want a new battery soon, though." She reached into her purse. "Please, let me pay you." He shook his head. "It's okay. Just, maybe pay it forward someday." She studied him for a moment. "At least let me buy you breakfast." He almost said no again. But his stomach growled, loud enough to betray him. She smiled. "There's a cafe right across the street." 10 minutes later, they sat across from each other with steaming coffee and 2 sandwiches between them. Mark ate slowly, trying not to seem too hungry. She introduced herself as Claire. They talked. Nothing dramatic. She asked about his work. He mentioned Lily. His eyes softened when he spoke about his daughter. "She's my whole world," he said quietly. Claire noticed the worn cuffs of his jacket, the grease under his fingernails that never quite washed out, the exhaustion behind his polite smile. When they finished, she thanked him again. He waved it off and rushed to work, thinking that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next afternoon, Mark's boss called him into the office. "There's someone here asking for you." Mark stepped out into the shop, and nearly dropped the rag in his hand. Claire stood there, but this time, she wasn't alone. 2 men in business suits stood beside her. And parked outside the garage was not the silver sedan, but a black luxury SUV. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said warmly. Mark wiped his hands nervously. "No, what's going on?" Claire smiled. "I didn't tell you yesterday," she began, "but I own this building." Mark blinked. "And 3 others in the neighborhood." His boss suddenly looked very interested in the floor. Claire continued. "I was on my way to finalize a redevelopment decision yesterday morning. I've been considering selling these properties to a corporate chain." Mark felt his stomach drop. If that happened, the small shop would close. He'd lose his job. But then, she said gently, "A man who barely had $12 to his name stopped to help me, and refused payment." Mark's face flushed. "You don't know that." She smiled, knowingly. "You left your wallet on the cafe table. I noticed when I paid." He froze. "I saw your daughter's photo," she continued softly. "And the school lunch receipt tucked inside." Silence filled the shop. Claire took a breath. "My father was a mechanic. He worked himself sick so I could go to college. He passed away before he could see what I built." Her voice trembled slightly. Yesterday felt like a sign. She turned to his boss. "I've decided not to sell." The relief in the room was immediate. "But that's not all." She looked back at Mark. "I'm creating a community auto apprenticeship program. Free training for single parents who want to learn a trade. And I'd like you to run it." Mark stared at her, stunned. "Me? You're skilled. And more importantly, you're kind." His voice cracked. I'm not a businessman." "I don't need you to be," she replied. "I need you to be exactly who you were yesterday." Tears welled in his eyes, the kind he hadn't allowed himself in years. "What about Lily?" he asked quietly. Claire smiled. "The program will come with a salary increase. And a scholarship fund for participants' children." Mark covered his face with his hands. All he had done was tighten a battery terminal. 6 months later, the shop had a new sign outside, "Ellis Community Auto Program." Single moms and dads filled the bays, learning how to change brakes, diagnose engines, and rebuild transmissions. Mark walked between them, patient and steady, Lily often doing homework in the corner office after school. One evening, as Mark locked up, Lily slipped her small hand into his. "Daddy." "Yeah, sweetheart, did you know helping that lady would change everything?" He smiled down at her. "No," he said softly. "You never do." Across the street, Claire watched quietly from her car before driving away. Sometimes, the smallest kindness, given for nothing more than a sandwich, can come back louder than you ever imagined. And in a city known for rain, one simple act had cleared the skies for good. 1500 WAD.